All right, let's jump right in. Today we're taking a deep dive into Python Simplified by Abdelazim Imam. I'm really excited to unpack this one and give you some key insights to get you coding confidently and hopefully quickly.
Yeah, this is a really good one to deep dive into. I was really impressed by it. It stands out, I think, from a lot of the other Python guides out there.
Yeah, I thought so too. I mean, right away, flipping through it, what was it for you that made it different?
Well, the thing that stood out to me the most was just how practical it is.
Mm.
Imam doesn't just sort of like throw syntax at you. He actually walks you through building real-world projects,
Yeah.
so you're learning by doing, which is perfect for anyone who really wants to be able to apply their knowledge right away.
I noticed that right away too. I mean, even just in the introduction, it emphasizes that Python is like the language for beginners.
Mhm.
What do you think about that? Is Python really that great of a language for someone just starting out?
It definitely has its strengths, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially if you're looking for, those quick wins and you want to actually be able to apply what you're learning.
Hmm.
Python's syntax is very readable. It's almost like plain English.
Yeah.
And there's just a massive community out there. Tons of resources,
Yeah.
which is, super helpful when you're getting started.
Right.
And, it's used in so many different fields.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And so the book jumps right in chapter 1. It's all about setting up Python. And it goes through Windows, Mac OS, Linux, all the different operating systems. Was there anything about the setup process that stood out to you reading through it?
You know what I was really impressed by? How beginner-friendly it was.
Yeah.
The book really explains everything clearly, even things that, people who've never programmed before might not know, like what a code editor is,
Yeah.
how to use an IDE, even just using an online interpreter.
Yeah.
It really anticipates those initial hurdles that can kind of trip up new learners.
Right. And then, I mean, right away, you're getting that classic hello world moment,
Right, right.
which I got to say, I've been programming for a while, and it's still kind of a thrill.
Yeah, yeah, it's like a rite of passage, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It is a rite of passage. And then chapter 2, the book dives into what it calls the building blocks of Python, the variables, the data types, operations.
hmm
I'm curious, how did this book's explanation of these kind of fundamental programming concepts compare to other ones that you've seen?
Well, one thing that stands out is how the book really emphasizes Python's dynamic variable handling. So, unlike some languages where you have to say, this is an integer, this is a string,
Right, right.
Python, it infers that based on the value you assign. So it makes it feel much more flexible, forgiving, I think, which can be really good for, someone who's new.
Yeah, so like if I say age equals 25, Python just knows that age is a number.
Exactly. Yeah. It takes care of those sort of behind the scenes details for you.
Okay, that's pretty cool. I like that. And then, of course, no programming language would be complete without operations, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, all those things.
Right.
What did you think of how the book covered those?
It does a good job of explaining how those operations work with different data types,
Yeah.
especially numbers and strings.
Mm.
It even covers string concatenation,
Ah, string
which
concatenate.
is a really, simple but powerful way to combine text together.
Yeah, that's where you use the plus sign to basically join strings together.
Right, exactly. It's a simple concept, but it opens up a lot of possibilities for working with text.
I'm already starting to see why this book is so popular. I mean, it really is laying a really good foundation, even in just these first couple chapters.
Mhm.
So you get through that, and then we hit chapter 3. And this is where we get introduced to conditional statements, the if, elif, and else. And this is where things start to get really interesting, because now you're teaching the program to make decisions.
Right, exactly. And conditional statements are really, I think, the building blocks of logic and programming.
Yeah.
And what impressed me about this chapter was that it uses real-world examples to show, what you can actually do with these statements.
Yeah.
And the example that really stood out to me was the one where you build a simple grading system.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it takes something that's really familiar and it shows you, okay, here's how you would actually translate that into code.
I remember that example. It was really clear and easy to follow.
Yeah, it's a great way to see, something that might seem kind of abstract at first, how it can actually be applied in a practical way.
Yeah, definitely. And then we move on to loops in chapter 4, which is where we learn about how to automate those repetitive tasks.
Right, loops are where programming really starts to feel powerful, I think. Imagine having to write the same code over and over and over again.
Yeah.
That's where loops come in.
It uses examples like generating multiplication tables, building that to-do list application. What stood out to you about those examples?
Well, they do a great job of showing how loops can really streamline tasks
Yeah.
that would otherwise be, tedious or
Yeah.
time-consuming. And it explains very clearly the different types of loops, for loops and while loops. And it also goes to those loop control statements.
Yes.
Break, continue, and pass.
Yeah, break, continue, and pass. Those are really handy, They give you so much control over how the loop behaves, like whether you want to exit early, skip an iteration, or just let it run its course.
Exactly, yeah. It's all about fine-tuning the behavior of your code.
Yeah, so much power in just those few keywords.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and then we hit chapter 5, and this is where we dive into the world of functions.
Ah, yes. Functions are essential, I think, for making code reusable and modular. So you can imagine you've got a piece of code and you need to use it multiple times in your program.
Mm-hmm.
Well, instead of copying and pasting it everywhere, you can, sort of package it up nicely into a function.
Right.
And then call it whenever you need it.
Yeah, it's like having a mini program inside your main program.
Exactly.
What I loved about this chapter was the unit converter example. I
Yeah.
thought that really brought this concept to life.
Right.
It was so cool. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that example does a great job of showing how functions can take input values, which we call parameters, and then, return output values.
Mm.
So you write functions to, convert kilometers to miles, Celsius to Fahrenheit, and so on. And then you can actually combine those to build like a complete unit conversion tool.
It's such a great example of breaking down a complex problem into smaller, manageable pieces, and then using those functions to kind of connect all those pieces together.
Yeah, it's a really, powerful approach to problem solving in general, not just in programming.
I'm starting to see that. Okay, so then in chapter 6, we get into Python collections. So we're talking lists, tuples, and dictionaries. And these are basically, the tools that you use to organize and manage data
Right.
in your program.
They're the workhorses, really, of data management in Python.
I love how the book used these really kind of relatable analogies to explain these concepts. Like lists are like shopping lists, tuples are unchanging records, and dictionaries are like phone books for quick lookups.
Right.
I love those analogies. They make it so much easier to kind of grasp those data structures.
Yeah, definitely. And they're really accurate, which is good.
And that contact book example using dictionaries was just gold, I thought.
Yeah.
I mean, just being able to look up information using those key value pairs, that's just so powerful.
It is. It's like having a digital Rolodex at your fingertips.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we've covered setting up Python, understanding variables and operations, making decisions with those conditional statements, automating tasks with loops, creating reusable code with functions, and then organizing data with those collections. It's amazing how much ground we've covered already.
I know, right?
And we're just getting started. There's so much more to explore in Python Simplified.
I know. I can't wait to dive into the next set of chapters.
Me too. So stay tuned as we continue our deep dive into this fantastic resource for learning Python.
We'll be right back.
Don't go anywhere. So before we took a break, we were talking all about those Python collections, but now we're moving on to chapter 7, and that's where where we learn about working with files.
Ah, yes. File handling. That's an essential topic.
It is. It's like giving your program a memory, right? Beyond just its immediate runtime.
Exactly. You've got to be able to store data, retrieve data.
I love how Python simplifies file operations
Mm.
with open statement. So elegant.
Oh, it's beautiful, isn't it?
It is. Ensures that the files are opened, processed, and then closed properly, which is, crucial for avoiding any kind of data corruption.
Absolutely. It's a great example of, I think, Python's emphasis on readability and safety.
I agree. Okay, get ready, because in Chapter 8, we enter the realm of object-oriented programming, OOP as the cool kids call it. I remember this being kind of a hurdle for me when I was first learning to program.
It's a big topic.
It is a big topic, but it's also where Python, I think, really shines in terms of just its power and flexibility.
Oh, for sure.
So OOPs can seem daunting, but it's really all about, modeling real-world entities in your code, right?
Yeah. It's about creating these blueprints for objects that have, properties and behaviors.
I remember struggling with OOP concepts when I was first learning. So how does this book kind of approach this? It's often a complex topic.
Well, it uses a library system as its example. which I thought was a really clever way to illustrate those core concepts. Your classes, your objects, your attributes, and your methods.
Okay, yeah. I can see how that would be relatable.
Yeah, you've got books with titles, author, due dates.
Right, right.
You've got users who can borrow, return books. It maps really nicely onto that OOP paradigm.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. So a class is like a blueprint, and an object is a specific instance of that class, right?
Right.
So you could have a book class and then specific book objects like The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy or Pride and Prejudice.
Exactly. That's a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And each of those book objects would have its own unique set of attributes,
Right.
like title, author, publication date.
And those attributes are basically just variables that belong to a specific object.
Precisely.
And then you have methods, which are functions that belong to a class, which define what those objects can do.
Right.
So like borrow book.
Right,
And
exactly.
that updates the book status, the user's borrowing history.
Exactly. It's about organizing your code in a way that actually mirrors the real world.
It does, yeah. And that organization I'm starting to see really makes your code more reusable, modular, and easier to manage, especially as your programs start to grow and get more complex.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Well said.
Okay, so OOP, definitely a game changer. Now, Chapter 9. That's where we start to discover the world of Python libraries and modules.
Ah, yes. This is one of the things that makes Python so powerful.
It is. It is. This vast ecosystem of pre-built tools. It's like having this giant toolbox at your disposal.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
And you've got all your built-in libraries for all sorts of tasks, like math, random number generation, dates and times.
Right. And then if you need something more specialized, there's a good chance someone has already created a library.
Yeah, almost certainly.
Right. And you can just install it using pip.
Exactly, yeah.
That's the beauty of open source, right? I mean, this vibrant community of developers.
I mean, they're constantly creating and sharing amazing tools.
I remember when I first discovered libraries like NumPy for numerical computations and Matplotlib for data visualization. Blew my mind.
Those are amazing libraries. I mean, they can save you so much time and effort. They let you do things that would just be incredibly tedious or difficult to code from scratch.
Yeah. The book even walks you through using Matplotlib to create a sales chart, which is so cool. It really shows a practical application of this really powerful library.
Right. Visualizing data is so important, especially these days.
It is. It is.
Okay.
So, Chapter 10, let's talk about this. This is building complete Python projects. So this is where everything that we've learned kind of comes together.
Yeah, this is where you actually put your skills to the test and create something.
So the book gives you two project options, an expense tracker and a tic-tac-toe game. What did you think about these choices?
I thought they were both really excellent choices for beginners.
Yeah.
The expense tracker is a very practical application that, a lot of people can relate to.
Yeah.
And then the tic-tac-toe game, it's fun and engaging.
It is, yeah. It's a classic.
Yeah, it's a classic.
And both of those projects reinforce, all those core concepts. The variables, data types, operations, conditional statements, loops, functions, even file handling.
Exactly. They really challenge you to think creatively.
Yeah.
To problem solve, which are essential skills for any programmer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, Chapter 11. No matter how good of a programmer you are,
Right.
you're going to encounter errors.
Oh, yeah. Count on it.
This chapter is all about debugging and error handling.
A crucial skill.
A crucial skill for sure.
Yeah. Debugging. It's an art and a science.
It is.
It's about being able to read those error messages.
Yeah.
Trace the flow of your code. Identify the root cause of the problem.
So the book does a good job of going through different types of errors. Syntax errors, runtime errors, and logical errors.
Right. Syntax errors are those kind of like grammatical mistakes in your code.
Yeah.
Usually Python's going to catch those, before the program even runs.
Right.
Runtime errors are the ones that happen while your program is actually running.
Yeah, like trying to divide by 0.
Right. Or accessing an element in a list that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And those can be a bit trickier to debug because, your program might work fine up to a certain point.
Right.
And then suddenly crash.
Yeah.
Logical errors are the sneakiest ones.
They are.
Because your program doesn't crash, but you just get the wrong results.
It's like it's following the wrong set of instructions.
Exactly, yeah.
I remember spending countless hours trying to track those down.
Yeah, it can be frustrating, but, also really satisfying when you finally find it and you fix that bug.
Oh, it is. It is. Okay, so the book provides some tips and techniques for debugging those. And it also covers the concept of error handling, using those try-except blocks.
Right. These blocks allow you to gracefully handle those errors
Yeah.
that might occur during your program's execution.
Yeah.
So you can prevent those, those nasty crashes.
It's like a safety net for your code.
Exactly. Instead of crashing, your program can catch that error, maybe display a helpful message,
Right.
and even potentially recover from the error.
It's a really essential technique for building, robust, reliable software. All right, Chapter 12. This is all about optimizing your Python code.
Yes, optimization. This is about making those programs run faster,
Yeah.
more efficiently.
It's often overlooked, especially by beginners,
Yeah.
but it can make such a huge difference
No, can, yeah.
in the performance of your code, especially as it gets more complex.
Especially as your programs get bigger and more complex, yeah.
So the book covers a range of techniques,
Mhm.
from choosing the right data structures and algorithms to using generators instead of lists,
Mm-hmm.
to even leveraging libraries like NumPy.
Right. I was really intrigued by that concept of using generators
Yeah.
to improve memory efficiency.
Yeah, talk about that.
So generators are really powerful if you're working with large data sets,
Mm-hmm.
because instead of storing everything in memory all at once,
Mm.
you basically generate values on demand.
So you're only using the memory that you need at that particular moment.
Exactly. It can significantly reduce your program's memory footprint.
Very cool. And, NumPy.
Oh, NumPy is a game changer.
It is. It's designed for speed efficiency.
built for speed.
It's great for those large arrays and matrices.
For sure. It's a must-have library for anyone who's, doing any kind of data science or machine learning.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And finally, Chapter 13, we get to testing.
Ah, yes. Testing. Often neglected, but absolutely essential.
It is. So essential for making sure that your code actually does what it's supposed to.
Right. It's about having confidence that your code is going to be reliable.
Mm-hmm. So the book explains different types of tests: unit tests,
Mhm.
integration tests,
Yeah.
and functional tests.
So unit tests, those focus on testing those individual components of your code in isolation.
Right.
Integration tests, those check how different parts of your code work together.
Mm-hmm.
And functional tests, you're looking at the behavior of your code from, the user's perspective.
So it's really testing it from all different angles.
Yeah. You got to be thorough.
And then the book talks about automated testing.
Oh, yes. Automated testing is a lifesaver.
I love automated testing.
It really is. It helps you catch errors early on.
Yeah.
And it prevents those regressions
Mm-hmm.
where, you make a change to one part of your code and then you accidentally break something else.
It's like having this tireless QA team working for you 24/7.
Exactly.
It's a must-have practice.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Especially for any serious software development project.
Okay, wow. I feel like we have covered so much ground
I know, right?
in this deep dive of Python Simplified.
It's been a whirlwind tour.
It has been a whirlwind tour, but I also feel like we've only scratched the surface
Oh, there's so much more of this book.
of what this book has to offer.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm already feeling inspired to start building my own Python projects.
That's the best part, isn't it?
It is. It is.
All the creative possibilities.
Yeah.
You know?
Let's take a quick break and come back to wrap things up. All right, so we're back. And I have to say, just going through all of these different concepts and techniques in Python Simplified,
Mm-hmm.
it really struck me how approachable this book makes programming feel.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, the author does a phenomenal job of, really demystifying it, making it feel accessible to basically anyone, no matter their technical background,
Yeah. It's like, he's taking you by the hand and, walking you through the whole process step by step,
Mm-hmm.
always emphasizing those practical applications.
Right.
I thought that was really well done.
And it doesn't shy away from those, more challenging topics,
Mhm.
like OP or
Yeah.
error handling, but it presents them in such a way that it's actually easy to understand
Yeah.
and apply. So it really strikes a great balance between, that simplicity, but also the depth.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think this book would be amazing for someone who's maybe, always been curious about programming, but never really knew where to start.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it gives you such a solid foundation in Python
Mhm.
that you can really, start building your own projects.
One of the things that I appreciated so much about this book is how it emphasizes that programming is creative.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just like, writing code.
Right.
It's about problem solving. It's about building things. It's about, expressing yourself
Right.
through technology.
It
It's
is.
incredibly empowering, I think. And Python Simplified, I think, gives you those tools and the confidence to unlock that creative potential.
It does, yeah. The possibilities are, I mean, really endless, right?
Yeah.
You can build websites, create games, analyze data.
Automate tasks.
Yeah, I mean, it's just amazing.
So where do you see Python being like really valuable or in demand right now?
I mean, Python is used everywhere, right? It's used extensively in data science, machine learning, web development,
Wow.
scientific computing, even things like cybersecurity.
Yeah, that's incredible. It's really a skill that's clearly in high demand across so many industries. I'm feeling inspired to dive in even more to this world of Python after this deep dive.
Yeah, I think Python Simplified has given you a really good launching pad.
It has. It has. So if you're listening and you've ever been curious about programming, I highly, highly recommend checking out Python
I
Simplified.
second that.
It's engaging, approachable, practical. It will give you the confidence to start coding.
Absolutely.
So to wrap things up, I just want to say, it's amazing to think that with just a little bit of effort and the right guidance, anyone can learn to code and, unlock that creative potential.
Yeah. It's a journey. It's a challenging journey, but it's also incredibly rewarding.
Yeah.
And with resources like this book, it's totally within reach.
It is. It is. So thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Python Simplified. And until next time, happy coding.